everyone. Welcome to our last director's talk at this year's TIFF. Unfortunately, we have some problems with our co-speaker moderator tonight. He's still stuck on the subway, so we decided just to start because the director of the film Chem 14 Total Control short film, Marc Wiese, he is here. So welcome, Marc Wiese. I want to thank our partners for our Director's Talk series. It's of course the Toronto International Film Festival, and it's German Films. German Films is the official organization to represent German film, the industry around the world, and Martin Scheuring is here, so thank you very much. So I will hand over to our program coordinator, Jutta Brennemühl, who will just take over.
Here we go. The good thing is that I did see the film, of course, and the even better thing is that I loved it, if that's the right word for it. I avoided watching the screener that you'd sent me, Mark, quite a bit. And then I did watch it, and I'm ever so glad I did. Marc Wiese, welcome. Thank you for coming. Just realized we're neighbors, so to speak, at home. He was born in Dortmund, in the west of Germany. He has been directing documentaries for TV and cinema for over 15 years. A selection of his award-winning films includes Death by Delivery, that was 2001, and then afterwards RADOVAN KARADZIC, Most Wanted, WARKIDS, Youth in Palestine, KANUN, Blood for Honor, The Picture of the NAPALM Girl, and now Chem 14, Total Control Zone. I mentioned this yesterday when we announced this talk, that, 3-4 days ago, I guess, Sound On Sight called it one of the most important documentaries of our time, which is no small feat. People don't tend to go to such stipulations. And similarly, Cameron Bailey, who programmed the film, and Mark just told me, I didn't notice that in the programming, that it's the only doc that the artistic director of TIFF himself programmed, said this is the one film you should watch during TIFF. So I hope you will go and have a chance, or we'll have to see whether we can somehow facilitate this, hopefully. Let me also quickly apologize again on behalf of Ali Kazimi. I really, really wanted him, we started talking weeks ago, I really wanted him to do this talk, and Ali, who is stuck on the subway and can't get out, he can't even get out to get a cab. Well, if you're Torontonians, you know how it is, and he'll join us later. He's terribly sorry, of course. After we'd seen it, it was just such a nice quote. Ali sent me an email and said, I was struck by the style and pace, along with the deep compassion, humanity, and respect Wiese brings to the subject, a haunting film, and I would love to see his other work, which is also nice, and as do we. Mark, perhaps before we start a little discussion, we do have a clip from the beginning of the film that Mark wanted to show us, because we realized that most of you wouldn't have had a chance. So let's watch this at the back. Just turn around. It's about a 5-minute clip. I hope that'll be fine. We've seen a lot of the stylistic elements, I guess, in this scene already. The focus on Shin, as well as some of those really remarkable animations. Frankly, when I read about your film at first, I was like, okay, it's a doc about this particular subject, it's mixed with animation. Boy, you know, it could have gone wrong. you might have felt like that as well, but the style of the animation is spectacular. And I noticed about half an hour into the movie, I forgot to make the distinction. Actually, it weaved in with the storylines so well, and I wonder how you were working with that animator. There's a beautiful interview on your web page with him where he describes that a bit too. Maybe we can start with that, because it was in a way a bit of a collaborative artistic effort.
Well, the starting point was rather obvious, because Shin Dong-Huyk has a unique story. He's a man born and raised up in a North Korean concentration camp. he had no idea that the world behind the fence is different, or was different. So he had an idea, there is a world, of course. These camps are like a city. They are living between 20 and 40,000 prisoners in a camp. So he definitely knew there's outside is a world, but he had no idea that it's different. So I like to compare it with Nelson Mandela, who was 25 years in jail. But there was a time before jail. So he had an idea of freedom. He had a wish for freedom. Shin not, never. He was born there and raising up. And this unique story of a man living and raising up like that convinced lots of people as we were collecting the money and the budget very quick. But the second question was always, how the hell you want to bring this into pictures? Because in North Korea, the government denies even the existence of the camps. So you have no chance to receive a permission to go there and film them. No way. And my friend and producer, Axel Angsfeld, had the idea to make animated pictures. I must confess, I was very critical in the beginning. Then I saw a piece called, a piece about a journalist in Iraq. And I could see, okay, it can work. But I saw in the beginning the same, that I thought this topic in animations, it's a thin line and it's ridiculous. So, and we had a group of 4 or 5 companies who are just producing animations. And they had to make pieces, and we decided, okay, this guy is the best, even the best to make it. And he had done the animations for another documentary called Green Wave about the revolution in Iran. And so we started, but it was a long process. And I mean, it was a team of 10 or 15 drawers, and I'm very sure that they hated me sometimes. Because we had 5 or 8 times the situation that Ali came with the hard disk and said, okay, Mark, we have the final versions of the animations. And I checked, I said, no, that's not final. And he came again, that's the final, no, still. Because I always explain it like that, they started to bring it one-to-one into animations. What I mean is, Shin had the situation, he was in the camp in a prison and he was tortured. So they just roped his hands and feet, hanging in the air, and made a fire under his back. So the chief of animation team just came with the first animated scene for this, and I got the drawings, and it was like this. You really draw the torturing scene. And I said, come on, we cannot do that, that's ridiculous. We cannot draw the torture. So what we need is a level where we just have the atmosphere of fear, for example, in that moment. So it was a long process. But
How did you go about that? Actually, now that you talk about it, I'm starting to wonder. What instructions did you give Ali, that's also the name of your animator, did you give him a scripted scene, or was that from your interviews with Shin where you said, okay, this obviously is set as a memory from North Korea, I don't have access, for one, so as a practical consideration. What did you tell them?
well, we had, of course, these hours and hours and hours of interviews with Shin. So we could work with them, and then we decided, okay, what scenes do we need? We just made a list, and then they made very rough black and white drawings, and very roughly. So, and we decided, okay, we need this and this and these pictures. And for example, he told me in Green Wave, in Camp 14, the animated scenes, the single picture is very long. So the edit is very calm, because the whole film is very calm. And he told me something like, well, you want animated pictures 30 seconds. He said for the other production he made 10 seconds maximum, so much quicker. And he told me it's much more complicated for him, because if you look on a big screen, 30 seconds, you see everything, every detail which is wrong. So, and then we start to, it was a try and error to be true, because for me it was the first time too to work with animations. And so it wasn't try and error to find the atmosphere. The colors are always like that, these earth colors, brown, gray, black, like that. And then we put only sometimes red flag or something like that, just a color spot. And then we played with the weather. Okay, what atmosphere is combined or just fitting in with the situation. So, but it was a long process. Of course, I mean, if I would repeat it now it would be quicker. I learned, of course. But we had fun, and in the end he was convinced because he could see, okay, we are just moving, we are getting better and better and better. Yeah. And it's always like that. And as we finished all animations, suddenly the man who made the edit, my friend Jean-Marc and me, we came and said, okay, now we have to change the first 3. Because in the beginning we were not at the point like in the end. So we learned over producing the animations. But I made fun. I told him, hey, you can have a picture of mine, and gave you drawers, and we can shout on me while they have to draw again and again and again. It's a long process.
Yeah, but it had to be just right, of course. What did Shin think about those animations?
Nothing. Because I offered him very early, Shin, I want to show you the film. I want to show you an edit. And he said very quick, no, I never watch it.
Really?
Really.
And
he refused.
Seen it?
No. He said, I don't want to see it. Okay. The reason is rather simple. I mean, as I arrived in Seoul, okay, to start the project, I mean, I met Shin first in 2008, and then we had a gap, and as I really arrived to make the film, and I started my research, and I started to talk to Shin. And I mean, I called my friend and said, hey man, with this guy we just cannot make an 8 minutes report. 100 minutes for cinema, forget it. He's not talking. Really, he told me nothing. And I was like, to be honest, it made me a little bit nervous. I wanted to make a big documentary for cinema about one guy. I have no chance to switch on another case, and this guy is not talking. So, and I can recall I went out, and it was after 3 or 4 days he was not talking, and then I went back and just looked at him and said, hey, what the hell is going on here? What are you doing? I'm flying around the world to meet you again, and we talk about this months and months, and now you are not talking. And then he said, honestly, he said, Mark, it's too stressy for me. I cannot do it 2 times. I do it 1 time in front of the camera. But I'm not doing it a 2nd time for your research. Forget that. You have to trust me.
No,
like that.
There's no taking another.
No, you just.
There's no 2nd take, 3rd
He
take.
just said,
no. Okay.
You have to take this risk. You have to trust me, because I said, but I have to check if you are good or not.
Yeah.
So, but he said, no way, because, and in the film is one scene where he is just saying, hey, I need a break.
I was going to ask you about that.
Like
I was going
that.
to challenge you about that.
But,
and you hold the camera for another, what, 3, seems more, maybe 3 seconds. I thought it was brilliantly done. And I know that a lot of people noted that. So it was conscious. I know what was going on in that situation. Shin says, we have to stop, I can't continue. And you hold the camera and there's quiet.
yeah, because I mean, lots of time the face is telling me more than the words. And I had to educate in a way my translator, because in the beginning Shin was talking, he was translating. And I said, hey, come on, stop it. I give you a sign. You are not translating. Because Shin is a guy, if you leave him alone, because he's really, you can see it in his face, he's going back into this world. So, and then he talks about the subject, going back into the world, there's a break, silence, 1 minute, 2 minutes. I'm not interfering, I'm not interrupting, just waiting. And then there's another memory coming. Or he begins to reflect himself. And then came the situation which were really good. So, I could see that.
Yeah, you were rewarded for that.
So I was just waiting. I mean, I was just waiting for that. Lots of times in interviews, it's just good. I mean, the people are used, if they are interviewed, there's a question coming, and lots of times it's very good if you're just sitting there and do nothing, just waiting. Because people are not good in just be silent long time.
Yeah.
So they start to think about it, and then they come. And with Shin, it was, I mean, it was totally different to usual shootings. I could only shoot with him something like 2 hours per day, because after 2 hours he was too exhausted. It was too tough for him. So we made interviews 2 weeks, 2 hours per day, nothing more. So, but that was the way it worked, and in the raw material, the scene like "I need a break" is something like 10 or 15 times. We had the situation nearly every day that he said, "No, it's
really?
too."
Yeah.
Or for example, I asked, "Hey, I want to come to the chapter where you've been sent to prison," and Shin said, "No, not today. Ask me that tomorrow or day after tomorrow, not today. I'm not strong enough." I know definitely that he had extremely nightmares in these 2 weeks. I could see sometimes in the morning that he was really tired. And he was really going back into this world, and that's very exhausting for him. And that was the reason why he said, "I don't want to see this interview."
And you actually opened the film with this insight. I mean, for me it was, I don't know what I was expecting, frankly. I mean, I was expecting a terrible story, you know, probably pictures where I would flinch. And then it starts with the scene where he talks about having nightmares, but he says a few remarkable sentences where he says, you know, it actually gets better after a while. You talk about it, and I was thinking, how can it possibly get better? I mean, this story is, if it was a fictional story, people would laugh at you because it's not real. But of course, it is a real story, and it starts with this, in a way, upbeat and this ray of hope. I guess it's, in a way, I thought it was nearly like a launching pad for you to get into a film. Because if you'd started with what? With the most desolate of quotes, okay, where would you go? And I thought that was it took me by surprise. It gave me personally, as a viewer, a chance to get in. So I was wondering about that, whether that was a very conscious decision to start, or how you got to that. Why did you start like that and not with a long explanation? You could have given us background on North Korea. Or wait, you never say that he lives in South Korea, actually. I mean, I think
we did.
Yeah, you did?
There's the insert.
The insert, yeah, but
that it's so.
Yeah,
so
and then he later travels to the US, so I was
That's it,
kind of thinking
yeah.
like, oh, maybe he lives in New York part-time, and I think he did at some point. And we see him in this, another very strong scene, he goes shopping in a South Korean supermarket. It becomes important later. And certain things he says, that is such a powerful scene, he doesn't speak. But he goes through the supermarket, and if you just look at his face, and he has this little tick, I guess, right? He kind of moves when he gets really nervous and really stressed out, he kind of makes this movement with his mouth, so you can tell that he's, and that is beautiful how you let us get to know this person. I mean, these are things that we know about our family members. But you give us a chance to get to know a person to that point, and it has to do with your directorial style. I was wondering whether you could talk a bit more about the subtleness of the interviewing. I think maybe twice we actually hear your questions, but not more often. I mean, keep saying if Werner Herzog had made this movie, it would have been entirely different. So how is this sort of a Marc Wiese movie? And I don't know your other films, unfortunately. What is?
Well, let's talk about this about the start of the film.
Yeah.
Okay. And we made a decision on 2 levels. So that we just said, this story is so strong, it's so unique. I said very early to the camera operator too, I don't want to have any artificial things. So we had very, very small equipment. And of course, I mean, it was a thin line again. You are just shooting a documentary for cinema, it's just a room with that, and there's a guy sitting and telling his story, full stop. Not, I mean, big pictures, no.
Yeah.
Very simple in a way. So,
yeah.
If you shoot it wrong, if the camera operator shoot it wrong, I'm destroyed. It's totally boring, of course. I mean, but I trusted the story, and for me, Camp 14 is no film about a prisoner and a prison camp. In the end, it's a film about human values and about 3 human beings who are dominated and brainwashed by a system. And the funny thing is that in the beginning of the film, for you never have seen the film, there are 2 commanders in the film. So,
From the North Korea
from North Korea.
North Korea
One
to
was chief of the guards in a camp in North Korea, and the other one was working for something like an inner state ministry. And in the beginning of the film, they are very opposite.
Yeah,
So
they're quite different, yeah.
They're totally the victim and the attackers in a way. So, but in the middle of the film, they are very parallel, because both never doubt the reality in the camp. The commanders never doubt it. They never see responsibility or feeling guilty. No, it was my task, I did it. I just saw in the morning Hannah Arendt, out of Eichmann, the same. The same.
Reality of evil.
So, but Shin, the victim, never doubted the guards too. He never doubted the system too. I just counted it one time and said, because he said, I was beaten every day. And I said, wow, every day, 24 years, it's roughly 7,000 times they have beaten you. To make that clear, they have beaten him nearly to death. He was several times heavily wounded because he was mistreated by the guards. But he's not able to feel or to produce anger against the guards, because still until today, he's just believing in the system he has learned. And that was fascinating, that the system is able to dominate and brainwash people like that. In the end of the film, they are opposite again, because the commanders are happy to be in South Korea and he wants to go back. It's a very surprising turning point in the end of the film. So it's a film about human values and not just a prisoner film. And that's the reason why we said then, okay, let's show in the beginning Shin just in an all-day scene. He's cleaning his teeth in the bathroom. And you just see somebody cleaning his teeth. And then the film is opening a window or a door and you see the world of this guy, which is totally different to the scene. And we did it with the commanders too. I can remember we made the first interview with the commander. I was really shocked because he just came in, very well dressed, and sat down and said, well, prisoners were for me like insects or worms. If I wanted to kill them, I killed them. And sorry for the word, but I made some interviews with real assholes. So people who killed lots of people. I worked in Bosnia, enough in Bosnian war and so on. So I worked with war criminals. I worked with the family of RADOVAN KARADZIC. And if you talk with people like them, they used to talk like or answer, it was common to do that and that. It was usual to do that and that. They are not saying, I did that because of responsibility. These guys are sitting there and this guy is just telling, if I saw a woman in the camp and I wanted her, I just said, you come into my home. She had no chance to refuse because she was killed. And then he said, well, it's not happening all the time, but if she got pregnant because I was together with her, we killed her. And the other commander is describing it. He said, I saw it with my own eyes. A woman with a big belly. And they had beaten her to death. So, and we made this interview, and I mean, I had an assistant, she's a famous journalist in South Korea, and she's only working for New York Times, Washington Post, and Time magazine. She can't do that. She refuses any other work. So, only the highest ranking, 55 years old, a real experienced woman, she was crying as she was translating the one commander interview. She was crying. And we came out of this interview, we were sitting together on the sofa, and I said, wow, I'm really impressed. I said in that moment already, it reminds me totally on the trial of Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem, the same bureaucracy, the same attitude, very similar. And then I was sitting there and said, but if we show it like that, singular, the interview, it's very easy just to build up a distance because the spectators will think he's a monster. And of course these guys are no monsters. They are no, like Hannah Arendt said in the feature film I saw in the morning, they are no Mephistos in Faust metaphor. And so I looked at her and said, Stella, we need him at home. I want to see him in the family.
his child.
I want to show him that he's a family father. I want to show him at work. And she said, you are crazy. We will never allow that. But in the end, we were successful and we could show that. And so, in a way, in the moment you see him at home, okay? And you realize the same guy who's just described that, how he had killed people. I mean, he's describing waterboarding, and he had a panel under his foot and was just controlling if the people are killed or not. And he's smiling in that moment. So, in the next cut, and you see him with a little boy in a supermarket. And you think, oh, is this the same guy? And then they are eating, the mother, father, and kid, and you are realizing it is the same guy. And of course, in that moment, for me, it's raising up the question, wow, in a way, he's a total, regular, normal human being. And what would others do if they would rise, just born and raising up in a system like North Korea? I've learned that in 95 in Bosnia. That was the time I've learned it. Because as I was in the beginning of 20s, I was traveling in former Yugoslavia. It was a civilized, developed country like Germany, full stop. They had another political system, but the rest, the same. And then suddenly, people in the same village are slaughtering because only of one reason, that somebody is telling them that you are not punished. That's the only reason. They just said you are not punished if you are killing. And of course not all, not 100%, but lots of people started to kill. Some tortured others for fun. Because they just said, hey, you're not punished, you're allowed to do that. That's the same attitude with the commanders. So it's about human values and how a system dominates and brainwashes these three people.
Yeah, because the question, of course, is, how do we get to that point? As humanity, you watching, how did we get there? Of course, the next question in the back of everyone's mind is, well, what would I do in a totalitarian system? And I thought that was really interesting. You mentioned that just now, Mark, at the beginning, that there were points of departure, of course, between these three characters, the one victim and the two perpetrators, although not everything is that black and white in the film, of course. But there's also points where there's terrible points of comparison in a way. And I think, I don't know the exact quote now, of course, but one of the commanders, I think you asked him, well, did you not know that this was wrong, or why did you do that? Anyway, I think his answer was something like, nobody ever told me it was wrong to kill prisoners. And there's, I don't want to say a similar situation, but Shin at some point says about this sort of difficult family situation that, of course, he had. Well, nobody ever told me how to love, to be in a family. We don't have to give everything away, but there's a lot of sort of tragedy in this particular situations. His parents were forced married, so I mean, in a way, one could really say technically he's a child rape, I guess, and I'm sure that hasn't helped him. I mean, it's not explicitly in your film, but I'm a mother of a 4-year-old that had the hardest time watching these early scenes and these scenes, this whole topic between the bond or lack thereof between him and his mother, and these questions of homecoming for him. I saw several tragedies in a film full of tragedies, but one, or really irony, terrible irony, is that he wasn't even a political prisoner. I mean, this is not even anything political. The poor man was born into a gulag, and then at the end of your film, you've mentioned it, ends up quite lost. No, he's lost.
Totally lost, not quite lost, totally lost.
Do you want to talk about this situation of sort of a person without, how you experienced that maybe, as a person who really didn't have a family and didn't have or has a home, but he's harking back to something he will never.
It has different levels in the end. First, of course, you can take the concentration camps of the Nazis, you can take the gulags in North Korea or Russia now. I mean, the system in such camps is always, there is no reason to be punished. What the prisoners learn is, I'm sentenced or punished for nothing. This atmosphere of fear Shin told me there were public executions every week. So it was this scene. I just asked him, hey, come on, my childhood memory was starting with 3 or 4, and what's your first memory as a kid? And I hoped he got a good scene, a funny scene, like he played or anything,
yeah.
you know, just that he took stones as toys or stuff like that. And I mean, he answered, well, there was nothing special, nothing special. Just keep that in mind, nothing special. And only, I was 4 and we went to this public execution. And after he described that, I said, come on, did your mother talk with you about that? I mean, you were just 4. 4 is like that. And you have to face a public execution. Did she try to help you? And he looked at me totally surprised and said, Mark, why the hell she should help me? It happened every week. It was our life then. So, besides starving, also let the prisoners starve and never give them enough food, simple, to be satisfied. Never, ever. So he had to starve 24 years. The other thing is how to control the prisoners is you are guilty, you are in the camp, and there has to be no special reason to be punished. He was beaten for nothing. There were lots and lots of people are just executed for nothing. The system is, there is, for example, I'm not sure about the day, but the execution is on Wednesday, and on Monday, he described me, all prisoners got nervous. And then the prisoners made it, the guards made it like that. They had the group and said, okay, you, and you, executed this week. Like that. I mean, there's another interview scene with the commander, which is for me unbelievable, where he describes it in a way like, well, you know, if I don't want to end up with bloody hands, and he wanted to kill prisoners, he just took a group and said, okay, you 8 prisoners, you kill one of yourself, but you do it on your own. And then he was just waiting. And in the end, they did it. Because he said, if you are not doing it, I kill you all. And he told me he had done it several times, not one time. That's the atmosphere though. You don't need a reason. You just see a group of people and you're just in the mood that you think, well, it's a good time to kill somebody, and you say, okay, you kill somebody. Or you do it on your own. The other one said, well, the prisoners were like insects, like a worm. I could kill them if I want. Nobody made me responsible for that. That's the atmosphere there, which is very valid the whole time. In the night, I mean, in the day, every second. You cannot come out of this atmosphere if you live in there.
And you have 0 control. It's not even, as we see in Shin's example, that you could say, if I play along, if I snitch, which he does,
no,
he gets punished.
No,
I mean,
sorry for interrupting,
yeah.
But there's no hope. It's a death camp.
Yeah.
If you are one time in Camp 14, you are never released. I asked him, I asked the guards, is there one known case that somebody, they named this camp's total control zone? Is there one case known that somebody was released? And they said no. Total control zone, you are never released. You have to live there until you are dead. Very simple example, in North Korea, everybody knows who the dear leader is. Everybody. I mean, if you're sitting on a newspaper and there's a photo of the dear leader in the newspaper, they are sending you into a camp. Everybody knows that. Shin had no idea. He had no idea who Kim Jong-il is in North Korea. It's like living in North Korea and be on the moon. He had no idea because they said, for what we have to teach them?
Yeah.
They teach them the things they need for their forced labor work, but nothing else. Because they say, come on, this guy is dying. And of course they will not reach an age of 70 or something like that. They are dying long ago because of forced labor work or stuff like that, or they are executed. So, and
that's yet another tragedy, that he's longing for a home, but when he says home, he keeps saying North Korea. But really he means the camp, because he didn't spend that much time in North Korea. You don't go into details of how he, I mean, he got out of the camp, you show that in the animated scene. Then I wasn't quite clear on the sort of timeline. The time he spent in North Korea, he fled to China, right? And from there went to Seoul, like we hear about people who get out of North Korea. But he will never have, even if there is a thaw, and this morning the papers claim that there might be one. I was kind of shocked to sit in the subway and read this particular article today that we were talking about this. That there's like little rays that there might be a glasnost coming. But even if that happens, the camps, hopefully at that point, will be gone. So, I mean, he's longing for a home that will be defunct, even if he can at some point say move to Pyongyang. But Pyongyang, as you say, is not also
No. Shin has no wish or idea to go to Pyongyang. I was totally shocked and surprised, as he said in the end of the interview. I mean, he was telling me 2 weeks of this horrifying world. And in the end of this 2 weeks horrifying hell, he's telling me, I want to go back. And I was like, what? Where you want to go back? I want to go back home in my camp. What? In what camp? I mean, I asked him something like 5 times to be sure, because I thought in the beginning that's impossible. And then I started to learn why he's doing that. In a way, in the moment, because he said before, he made a very tough comparison. He said, we were beaten, we were public executed, but I never have seen that somebody in the camp had committed suicide.
Yeah.
And the people here, and by the way, if you take the historical parallel to the KZs in the Second World War, the same. There are very, very rare cases that people in the KZs have committed suicide. It's very easy. You just have to beat some guard and he shoot you. In Shin's camp, you just have to run into the fence. It's an electric fence. You are dead in a second. But the guard is saying it too. The guard is sitting there and saying, it's very surprising. They have to face this hell, but they are so strong holding their lives. They want to survive.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Why are people in a world which is a hell where all people here in the room would say, I don't want to face it a second day. I never want to face it a second week or year. But if the people are in the reality, they want to survive. And what Shin is saying, and it's true, that he says, well, here in Seoul, everything is focused on career, on money, and the people have everything. They have clothes, they have food, they have apartments, they have jobs, but they commit suicide. For him, totally surprising. And of course, I mean, in a way, this guy is criticizing our way of life extremely. And he's true. Seoul is an extreme competitive city, and they have an unbelievable number of people. It's something like 300 per day try to commit suicide in Seoul. Somebody told me that, I was not believing, and I was asking a correspondent of BBC I know there, and he said, yeah, it's true. Okay, they are living 24 million people, or rather big population, but even that, 300 per day, because they are so competitive. And lots of people are not able to handle this pressure. And for Shin, it's simple, impossible to find a way into this world. It's so clear. He wants to go back into the world he knows, which is familiar with him. So, like he said in the end of the film, I miss my innocence. And he's talking about the life in the camp. He misses his pure heart, he says. A wonderful sentence about a hell. And there's another point where I was like, wow, that showed me so much about the camp. He managed, I mean, shortening up now, he had no idea of the outside world. And for the prisoners, it's strictly forbidden, if they are coming into the camp, to talk about their former life. If you do it, you are public executed. But one prisoner, they got friends, they were working together, and this prisoner broke the rule in a way and told him, well, I have eaten chicken, like that. And for Shin it was like, what? It was like unbelievable thing. I've eaten rice and chicken. And as I said, he had no wish for freedom. He risked his life and managed to escape and said the reason was I wanted to be one time satisfied by eating enough rice. Full stop. I mean, if you think about it, we do it every day 3 times without thinking about it. This guy is risking his life for eating one time. So, and he did it and he managed to come out. And he came out in a, wow, it's rather far away from Pyongyang. There are no big cities. You are not allowed to travel there, to go there by the authorities. But it's a real poor area. And we had some video footage which one commander privately had filmed. If you see it, it's like 100 years ago, sorry. And if all of us would travel there, we would think, wow, to live there, it's hell. The people are really poor and starving, and so don't forget in North Korea, I mean, every 2 or 3 years, thousands of people are dying because of starving. And Shin came out and saw this and said, well, this was paradise for me. This was heaven. He never had seen colored clothes, never. He had no idea what money is. He said, I saw people and they paid with some papers. They just paid something and they received food. He was totally surprised. So, and of course a guy like him, I mean, and then coming to Seoul, wow. I mean, Seoul was stressy for me, but for him, it's simply impossible to find a way there.
Because he nearly has this sort of Kaspar Hauser syndrome.
Of course. I mean, he was
Is
living
it,
like
I
Kaspar
don't know
Hauser.
how people live in Seoul, normally in their apartments, but his apartment is as good as empty. There's nothing on the walls. He has a mattress on the floor, and I was kind of assuming that that's probably a lot of stuff for him.
Well, there are 2 funny episodes, because we brought our equipment in, and I came to research and saw the steps, and one day I thought, hey, where the hell the steps are going? And went up and said, hey Shin, here's a whole first floor. Why are you not using that? And Shin said, no, it's too big, it's too big. And I came down, and by the way, you have no mattress. No, I need it like in jail, like in the camp. I want no bed, I want no futon, I have to sleep on the floor. And then I just open some things and say, hey, everything is empty. Yeah, I just have my bag and there are some clothes in, that's it. He has no idea of family values, of human relationships. I mean, he said in the film, as somebody in prison helped him, I was 14 and it was the first time that I saw that a human being can help another human being. And he didn't have said, it was the first time that somebody helped me. He said, in general, it was the first time that I saw human beings helping each other. So he had no idea of that, and he's still, until today, I mean, there are many levels, he's not able. He had a little relationship with a woman in Seattle. It was very funny. And
that was an unbelievable scene. We could talk a long time about the scene in the US.
And
yeah.
But I was shooting with him and working in Seoul, and they were Skyping. And he was always coming to me and said, "Ma, she has written that and that and that. What shall I answer?" I mean, he had no idea. He never had a girlfriend. So I helped him, said, "Hey, Shin, make it like that and that and that." But I saw them the first time together, and even in Seoul, before they really came together, he said, "I'm not sure if I'm able to live that." And we saw them the first time together. She was very young and unexperienced, and I told my camera operator, they have no chance. I mean, if you want to handle a guy like Shin with this story, you have to be really experienced on a human level. And so they quit after 2 or 3 months. And he told me after that, I'm sure I'm not able. I would like to have a family, but I will never have one.
Yeah, this is a very tragic scene, just on a physical level. I thought that was in a way ironic. He manages even to do this with you and to give you this access, and then the only time he says he gets angry in his world, that means he gets slightly agitated and physically more uncomfortable, is when he talks about the physical reminders of his torture. And again, it's very smartly done how you open with this bathroom scene. I mean, we just see him brush his teeth like we all get up in the morning. For him, we later learn, this has a totally different dimension. I got up this morning, I took a shower, brushed my teeth, and I was done in 3 minutes. He sees his body, he then demonstrates his overextended arms from this torture that you described, from hanging from the floor. His back must be burned.
It is.
We don't see it, but it must
I saw the
saw
scars.
it. And that is the one, I found that so remarkable that that seems to be the point where he sees it, so that makes him angry, and of course it hinders him, because he walks down the street, he looks like a normal young man. I noticed how he was fairly fashionable too, in this kind of Korean, you know, it's like a lot of Korean kids that I see here, frankly, in Koreatown. The nice jeans with the embroidered back pockets, he had like really good style. I thought, I was wondering about whether he has any chance for relationships, and you just explained that. So,
Well, I mean, we showed him on conferences, on human rights conferences, and we showed him in events where he told his story, and he's functioning, yes. If you would just reduce it on that, you would think, well, unbelievable, this guy is really far. And my assistant, we had one assistant in a similar age only for Shin. And I said, hey, you have to hang around with him lots of time, even if I'm not in Korea. So, and he said after 2 days, we were visiting Shin and talking to him, and he said wordly to me, Mark, I cannot see the shadows. And I just was looking at my assistant and said, oh, just wait a little bit. And after 1 week, I said, do you still have problems to see the shadows? And he said, no. What I'm meaning is, Shin is totally traumatized. But you cannot see it in the first moment. It's coming later. If, for example, he's talking to you, and he was talking to me in the research, and then he was jumping up and running out. And I was running with him, because I thought, what the hell is he doing? And then he was running around and cruising in Seoul, 2-3 hours. But he never stopped to take a tea or a coffee. He never went into a cinema or stuff like that. He was just running around. And later on, of course, I asked, I said, why are you running around like that? And he said, I have to do it because I have to make myself tired, because it's the only chance that I get a little sleep. I said, what do you mean? I said, if I'm lying, he said, if I'm lying down in the evening, the memories are coming back, the pictures are coming back. And I have to run around hours and hours to make me tired, to find a way to simple to sleep. And so he's totally traumatized, of course.
maybe one final topic, one final answer before we take some questions for those of you who've not seen the film or have seen the film. Just to draw a somewhat wider circle around your work, you've mentioned some of your films, I've mentioned some of your films in the intro, and I mean, it's not hard to make the connections. You know, you've made a film on Karadzic, you've mentioned that. You also told me before that you did, I didn't realize the picture of the NAPALM girl, that's quite a well-known film, that she actually lives here, and that you were here to film parts of that. We all know who that is, right? The girl in the Vietnam War and the NAPALM attack that's going on. So you seem to go for hell and survival. I mean, let's not forget that whole point, that there's survival in there. What is it for you that attracts you to subjects that made you decide to do a project or not?
Well, in Shin's case, it was really like that. I read this article in the Washington Post, and I knew in 10 seconds I want to tell this story. So, I mean, in Shin's case, it's very easy. The story is so unique. I think you find a story like that one time in 15 years, not every year. So, but in general, yes, I like to go in difficult areas, and I like to go over a long time there. For example, in Palestine, I lived 6 months in a refugee camp, because the first idea is, lots of time, it's very simple. I mean, it was the time of the second Intifada, and every Friday in the news they showed the kids throwing stones and the Israeli soldiers shooting. And I was sitting there and just thinking, well, what the hell they are doing the rest of the week? Why they show me every week these stereotype pictures? It was so boring. And it shows me nothing. The same about Modern Times, I have to say it, because it was really impressing me. It's Shin and Camp 14 story now. I was sitting at home at a regular desk computer, nothing special, Google Earth. And I put in Camp 14, the next town, North Korea, and I could see the camp.
That doesn't exist officially.
I couldn't believe it. I checked it with other camps. I asked a guy who made a huge report, David Hawke, and he produced digital pictures too, and satellite pictures and so on. So what I mean is, in Modern Times, you can sit there at home, you are safe, you are secure, you are satisfied, and you can watch live on the camps where the people are dying. How cynic is that? And I mean, just try to imagine the Second World War, we would have had pictures of Auschwitz live. How the smoke is going on. I mean, imagine that. And you can do it today. As Darfur was burning, you could see it on Google Earth. The UN and everybody was going on. Médecins Sans Frontières, they were the only one who were still in. But you could see it on Google Earth. So in a way, our task as storytellers is, well, let's open this door. Because this modern information society is a big illusion. It's like showing the stereotype pictures. So, stone-throwing kids every Friday, but you know nothing about it. It's not telling you something real. So I like to go to the places. In that case, I said, well, just take a microcosmos. It was a soccer team of a refugee camp. And let's just tell the reality of this team. And I like to learn from the people, to live with the people. I lived with them in this camp 6 months. And the Israeli army was sheltering the camp and so on, but it was not really a war situation. It was more civil war, like that. And you learn a lot. I mean, you learn a lot. Suddenly you realize, wow, this is propaganda, this is misused, this is misused. Hamas and Al-Aqsa brigades, they are always bringing the intifada, but is there one known case that one self-suicide bomber is out of a family of a leader of Hamas or Al-Aqsa? No, never. And then, okay, what kind of kids they are using? Poor families and so on. And then you are meeting the kids who came back out of jail because they survived, for example. They were no suicide bombers, but they were working for them. And so they are, I mean, war is a dirty business and has so much levels. And everybody's interested to tell his propaganda. And I have another episode, really funny. I stayed in Bosnia really long. And I stayed in Albania for a long documentary about blood revenge, so I'm very familiar with the Balkan. So, I mean, it was in Bosnia and these international troops were still there and they made an election, okay. And in CNN, BBC, everybody was reporting, look here, this war country is going back to democracy. But the truth was, they had masses of internal refugees and they were voting for their original home places. To make it very easy, the Muslims were voting suddenly for a Serbian town and they were just voting for a major with, I mean, he couldn't work there one day. No chance. But nobody was telling this story. And sometimes people are joking like, well, it's time to make a funny film for you, like that. So, but the first idea is always very simple. In the case of RADOVAN KARADZIC, I mean, I stayed in Bosnia, there were 80,000 international soldiers. Bosnia is a small country, and I simply said, I'm not believing that it's not able to find him. And we proved it. We really proved it that they had found him 2 or 3 times. And in that days, RADOVAN KARADZIC was the most wanted man of the world, because it was before Osama bin Laden. And on a film level, of course, I mean, if you have war in the background, if you have tragedy in the because I mean, you have more topics to tell in a film. It makes it easier, of course. Yeah.
It's about human values.
I like my favorite joke is most complicated project for me would be just make a film about somebody who's working in Germany for an insurance company. Wow. So like that, typical middle class. Well, try to make a 90 minutes film about this. There are pieces, and there are people who are able to do it, respect.
Yeah.
But for me, wow, very complicated. Of course, I mean, I stayed in Belfast and I was sitting around with kids and suddenly the kids said, hey, go on the floor. And I was an idiot. I was not fast enough. And the kid of 8 years took me on the floor. And then I saw shadows and I said, quiet, who said? Well, these are the Protestant killers. And next day I was in the same family and the clashes started again and suddenly the kids were running out of this little flat, crossing a street into another flat, into a room, started a CD player, very loud music, and I thought, what the hell they are doing, disco? I had no idea what's the sense behind. And then the song was ending, and then the little break, and the next song started. And in this little pause, where there was no music, I could hear the clashes. And I realized they are fed up. They can't handle it anymore. They were there the whole life, because it's the most dangerous street in Belfast. And I realized, wow, these kids, their whole life, they have seen these clashes and heard them. And it's just to push the world out, push the violence out, making loud music. For a filmmaker, this is a scene where you think, well, if you can film this, he's telling you so much about the kids, about the reality of the kids. So,
and unfortunately, it's often kids. I notice now how you talk about film of Palestine, it's often children that you then focus on. Is there that tragedy bigger? Is that a larger foil to show them?
No.
It just so happens that they're
it just happened, but
victims of war?
lots of cases. I was in Palestine, for example. These fighters were very important. In Bosnia, there was only the story of one kid important. But it's not that I'm focused on kids. You have situations in this story in Albania about blood revenge. They are killing because of questions of honor. Okay, and if there is one family falling in blood feud, the whole male members of the family are threatened. And there is a law that you are not allowed to kill the others in their own homes. The result is that the parents keep the kids in. And my main person were 5 years ago, we made the first film, now in summer we made the second film with them. And he was something like 17, 18, and he was living in one room since 13 years. And of course, it's difficult how to bring this 13 years of just waiting. Be threatened, be afraid, be lonely. How to bring this in pictures without comment. It's a big task, but it's fascinating.
Well, it's great to have filmmakers around who do political films and films with political content, because we do see a lot of the docs. But let's open up the floor if you have questions.
Yes, based on what you said about the family, that he finds he'll never have a family. However, I remember pretty much in the opening of the movie that I was a happy child, I was laughing. And I was thinking, so if he never knew the concept of family, or about affection, or whatever you want to put it, so how could he know about laughing and being a happy child? Where did that come from?
Well, I think he never had a concept of family like we know it. Okay, in a way, he has his own concept of family, because the mother and the father never lived together. The father was allowed to meet the mother one night in 3 months. That's it. The brother never lived in the family. And he was living together with his mother, but the mother was leaving something like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and coming back 11 o'clock p.m. So in a way, Shin was living, I mean, he was nearly living alone there, and besides sleeping. But he had no comparison, you know.
To elaborate a little more, you know, so the brother came back to the mother.
Mhm.
So and again, if there would be no concept of a family, you know, so that just stuck out. Yes, I get the hardship. So the brother flees a cement factory, goes back to the mother. And so that part I just didn't get, you know, so he says, claiming quite convincingly, yes, I was a happy child, and the brother understands about the role of a mother, and she does the same, so I'm just trying to get that level.
Well, I think even if you have not the chance to live a family, they still know, and the mother still knows, this is my son. Although it was just, I mean, there are very strange conditions how she got pregnant, for example. I mean, even a raped woman will not throw, in most cases, the kid away. So, and she wasn't raped. They were just married by God, but then it was, I mean, they did it on their own. She wasn't raped. And for me, this scene, for the others who had no chance to see the film, it's like a scene out of a Shakespeare drama. Shin was taught his whole life, if you see anything suspicious, you have to report it. Even if it's your father or your mother, equal. You have to report everything. And he's coming back and see his brother who was not, as he mentioned, in the forced labor work. If you leave the forced labor work in the camp, you are executed, you are killed. And he realized they are talking about questions if it's necessary that that the brother is trying to escape. But the problem for Shin was, he knows the other law in the camp. If somebody tries to escape and the escape fails, and the chance that the brother will be caught or killed or something like 99%. If this is happening, the whole family is killed as a punishment. It was common. So she stood there, 14 years old, and knew definitely, okay, I had to report. What shall I do? If I'm not reporting and he's escaping, but he fails, we are all killed. If I'm reporting that mother and brother symbol make talks like that, they are killed. It's like Shakespeare, sorry. It's a drama. It's a pure drama. And his decision was he went to a teacher and he reported. And he was tortured for that because the teacher failed to tell the other guards that he had made this report. It came out later. And after he was tortured 7 months, he was released, and they blindfolded him. And he said, they brought me to a place and they took it away, and he realized, well, it's a place for public executions. And the guards brought him and his father in the first row, and then they brought the mother and the brother and executed them in front of his eyes. So I cannot answer this question perfectly, to be honest. I have no idea. If perhaps he's using the terms of mother and brother and so because he had learned it. I mean, as we did the interview, he was out 3 years, 4 years. So of course he had learned what is common, how to describe this. What I mean is, if I'm saying he has no idea of a real relationship or real family values, that he has no idea of the emotional level, for example. And this scene is a very good example for that, because his mother was executed in front of his eyes, and he said, I was not sad, I was not crying. I mean, sorry for us, it's unbelievable. If somebody kills a family members in front of us, we are more than sad, we are destroyed. And he was, in a way, relaxed. His father was sad, but he not. He was angry on his mother because he said she was responsible for the fact that I was tortured 7 months. So that's, I mean, the emotional level. About, if I'm talking about family values, he had no idea of that. He had no idea of this emotional level. He had no idea of money level. That's the reason why he's failing in this life in Seoul and why he wants to go back.
And that's, I mean, that's the lasting insidiousness of that manipulative system, the Perpetrators, the systems, that they do that to somebody's mind.
He had no chance to learn anything else. How?
Yeah.
He was born in there. And, I mean, one point which is, it's very quick forgotten, but Shin was innocent. He never had done something. But from the first day of his life, as he was a baby, he was a political prisoner. But he never had done something wrong.
Yeah, very Orwellian. There was actually a line in Hannah Arendt that I saw after I saw your film, thank God, because so much in Hannah Arendt explained, or at least tried to explain what was going on. Hannah Arendt teaching, her students ask her about the camp, the concentration camps across the Holocaust, and she says, the whole point was to make you feel unnecessary as a human being. It was very plain, but that was, I was struck. I was like, oh my God, that was, yes, you're not even guilty. It's not even about that. It's long left that level. You're simply unnecessary. You could be killed, you could not be killed. It was volatile, completely volatile situation that we can imagine.
That's what they established. You are in the camp, you are born in the camp, and from the first day you are guilty. And you have to prove the rest of your life that you try to just to work hard, to show them that you have learned that you are guilty.
But you're not really
That's the
rewarded.
system. But you never
You're
reward.
punished. You get one spoon less
Of course,
of
yeah.
food, which
There are
is
no rewards.
of next to no food.
I mean, there's no hope if there's no chance to be released.
Yeah.
So.
And still they survive. Any other questions?
Two simple
Please.
questions. You know, you took all the interview with Shin, many interview. Is there any plan to take the interview and to write it as a book also?
There is a book. There is a
Oh,
book.
so there is already a book.
Yeah,
Okay.
there is a book. This guy who blamed Harden, who had published this article in the Washington Post.
Okay.
He's retired today and living in Seattle, and he had written a big book, and it's published, I think, in 15 countries of the world.
The same name came from, like if I go to Amazon.
The name in US and Canada, it's Viking
Bye.
published it, and it's Escape from Camp 40.
And the second question, what is your next movie? If you know.
Well, I'm planning. It's a story about a girl from Afghanistan. It was the picture photo press award of the year 2011. And they have cut her the nose and the ears. There are two very famous pictures from Afghanistan. The famous National Geographic picture and this one. And it's a fascinating story because she was misused for propaganda and so on and so on.
You don't get sad because, you know, it seems that you're traveling around the world looking for horrific situation.
No.
You don't get depressed after a while seeing all these places?
No, I'm not traveling around the world looking for the horror, no. Now I'm just, you know, it's just stories. The stories bring me to the places. I mean, hey, to be honest, I never would plan to go to Afghanistan. I'm not crazy. Sorry for the word, it's fucking dangerous. I have another project where I have to go to Sudan. Extremely dangerous. I think at the moment you have no chance to go by jeep there because it's too dangerous. You have to find a way to work there because it's war. So I'm not planning it, but there are stories where I said, and I'm very emotional on the way, and if I'm reacting on an emotional level, because you have to spend 1.5, 2 years in that project, and you have to be very convinced yourself that you say, yeah, I want to tell this. There are lots of people you have to convince. I mean, even the people who have to give you the money. So, but in this case too, because it's a very deep story, and it's like Leni Riefenstahl. It's a story about propaganda. It's very fascinating.
Can you actually prosecute these guards, or is it just difficult because there's just, how are you supposed to gather the proof when you have to go to the camera concealed and get the
Well,
evidence?
Don't take me wrong. If I'm saying there is a question how we all would react in a system like that, I don't want to say they are not guilty, they are not responsible. Of course they are. And I mean, my own grandfather was in the resistance a little bit, Second World War times, Nazi times. Yeah. Of course, in the end, as I said, in Bosnia, they said you are not punished, not 100% were slaughtering parts of the people. I mean, in the end, you are responsible for what you are doing. And in the end, you have to be able to do it. But I try not to judge them simple, you know. I try to realize what is behind. But of course, I mean, to be honest, I'm convinced if there is one day an international court, like this international UN court for former Yugoslavia or Rwanda, if there is one for North Korea, you take these interviews, the raw material, and they are sentenced. Because, I mean, they're just telling how much people they have murdered, how they raped a woman for fun. Well, you have to be able to do it as a personal human being. Perhaps I'm wrong, I'm sure I'm not able to do that. So, but for me as a filmmaker, of course, the fascinating aspect is what is the system doing with the people? Because, I mean, it's happening again and again, you know. It's happened in Germany, and it's happening now in North Korea, and in some years it's happening in the next country. It happened in Cambodia, you know, and I mean, Cambodia kids, it happened in Africa. We just saw a piece of work in process, and I know two very, very good films, documentary films about child soldiers in Africa. It happened too. They brainwashed them. And kids just start to kill others.
But is it just that there's the lack of proof? Like, I mean, are they just waiting for the regime to fall?
Sorry.
What is their status? Yeah, what is their status in South Korea? Actually, you never mentioned that. Are they waiting for? Well, we did a program. I think was it a year ago, 2 years ago now, about the lives of others, the film The Lives of Others, and we had Marianne Björtler here, who is at the time was the head of the Stasi archives, so very high-ranking and important German official who was dealing with the recent past of the East German secret state police files. And off stage, it was interesting that one of the things she told us was about her work and what they do every day, other than that we knew every German who has a stake in it and who has a name in there can go and look at their own file. What they also do is they educate other countries, and she said there's delegations from South Korea monthly at the Stasi archives in Berlin. They're getting ready for that whole question of what happens after unity. How do you deal with your past when it becomes your past? And I thought that was completely, I mean, I could have guessed, I guess, but it took me by complete surprise. And what is their status? What is these guys are in front of the camp? One uses the first person, I noticed. One not so much, because you have two guys, and I thought it was really interesting. One was more uncomfortable. He was very kind of, oh, I have a flu. It's like, I wish I had slept better. I'm really not quite ready. And he was in his best Sunday suit. But he was kind of like, we would do this, one would do that. The other guy was like, I. And you were talking.
The first one said I too.
Yeah, he occasionally said, but not, I thought not. In the material that was left, I really started to count. That guy was just like, yeah, you know, the scene that you described. I like to a woman, I would rape her, and go ahead.
I asked both of them, how did you get out of the country? Why did you get out of the country?
Why and how, and
And
what is their status now?
they gave me both the same answer. I'm not telling you.
But do you know how the hero is managed to escape North Korea? Because
You have to see the film.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, but-
in there.
suppose I
Yeah,
won't
but let me
so-
first finish this answer.
Yeah.
So the two offenders or attackers and guards, they said, no, I'm not telling you. I know because my assistant is very familiar with the Secret Service scene in Seoul, and they had made a deal with them. So they gave them information. This guy of this inner state ministry, he has real information. And I mean, they are in good jobs. Lots of defectors have problems to find a job. It's common that defectors from North Korea have real problems to find a job. These two guys have real good job, especially the one from the ministry. I mean, you are not receiving this by chance. Come on, they made a deal
Yeah.
like that. So, but to the other point, I mean, unification or reunification, I'm not believing in that, really not. I worked 2005 in Korea for 6 months for another project. I worked in this project very long in Korea. They are so scared and they are so afraid of the chance of reunification
In South.
in South Korea. Because everybody is telling you, hey, we have seen in Germany how expensive that is. It will destroy us. And don't forget, economic status or level is the most important fact at all in Korea. Economy is above all. They are very successful, of course. I mean, all these companies, Samsung, LG, and so they are all Korean. I learned it there as I arrived.
You see it in the pictures, and I said, oh yeah, that's Korean too.
Yeah, because I thought, well, they are Japanese. No, they are all Korean. And they are, I mean, Seoul is the most developing city, fast developing city in the world on an economical level. So they are top in a way. And they have developed extremely fast in the last 20 years. I saw a documentary where they have shown pictures of South Korea 20 years ago. It's unbelievable how they have developed. They are much more developed on a technical level in Seoul, for example, like in comparison to Germany. We are far behind them. They are 10 years in front of us, minimum 10 years. Lots of things, all-day life things there.
So you're saying they don't really have an interest?
They have no
Yeah.
interest. No,
Yeah.
they have no interest. And don't forget, I mean, East Germany was much more and better developed than North Korea.
Yeah, and that's where really sort of.
And they are really afraid of that fact. So,
side.
I'm no expert for that. I'm no academic for just political levels in Asia, but I'm not thinking that there is a real chance on the South Korean side. And very important, on the North Korean side, there's no chance. I mean, come on. There's just this new leader.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's very well
Maybe know
known.
people.
No, but it's well, and he's young, and now they are saying, well, perhaps it's coming better times. It's very well known that the real powerful person in the background is the aunt, and she's worse than everybody else in the whole country. She's very well known. She's so extremely brutal, and she's so, in a way, thinking in the same direction and ideal like Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung. And everybody who is really informed told me, well, she's really worse than Kim Jong-il. And the young guy came, and I mean, they changed the whole leadership of the military in 2 days. It was a little news only. And I asked a friend who received a Pulitzer Award for another story. As I made the first production, they made a book, AP, and I made the film for History Channel in Germany, and they received the Pulitzer Award for their book. And I phoned him and mailed him and said, come on, is it true? Did they really? And he said, yes, they changed the whole leadership of the military in 2 days, in a system where military leadership is extremely important. They are not opening the country, forget that. I mean, perhaps I'm wrong, but I don't think so.
Do you want to answer that question about the escape?
Could you comment a little how the hero was able to escape from North Korea?
How Shin was able?
How did the authorities allow such a person with such a history? It should be clear to North Korean authorities that being out of the country, he'll be able to speak. Of course. So how did they allow it?
Clear. If the authorities know Shin, let me say it in that way. Shin told me one day, I want to go to China. And I said, hey man, better not do that. Because I mean, he's now famous enough. They arrest him on the airport and send him back to North Korea. And the North Korean authority would kill him directly. No
You mean
question.
he was not allowed by North Korean authorities to
No,
escape?
he was escaping from the camp. It happened like that. He decided with a friend, I want to come out of the camp. They had no real good plan. They did it more like spontaneous. And yeah, they were just collecting wood, and suddenly they realized he's no guard around. And the friend ran into the fence, although they knew. She told me we knew it's an electric fence. But he did it without thinking about it, and he was dead in a second, the friend. But the weight of the dead body was just producing a gap in the fence. And he was crawling over the dead body of his friend. And his legs were burned. You can see it until today, the scars. But he was able to come out. And then he was just running away and hiding and stealing clothes because he had the camp clothes, very dangerous. And managed just to travel secretly through North Korea to the borderline. Very important in that days. There's a river, Tumen River, and in winter it's frozen. So in that days, it's a huge difference. It was rather easy to cross this river. Today or nowadays, it's nearly impossible.
He spent like his level 20 years in the camp. There's no knowledge of geography, of anything, of the political system in his own country, how the life is, how did he manage?
He told me he just heard of China like that. People told him, and he heard
In the
of
camp,
it.
in the camp.
No, outside, in these weeks outside. And in China, he was running into the mountains, and there was a farmer.
Wait, he first went to China?
Yeah, he went to China, and he was hiding in the mountains. And he told the farmer, because in this Yangon region, borderline China, North Korea, there are living something like 40,000 people from North Korea, refugees. But from time to time, the Chinese authorities clean the area and send something like 5,000 and all back. They all come into camps. So, and he realized that because, of course, the people are talking about that, and he ran into the mountains and told the farmer his true story. He told the Chinese farmer, I'm a refugee from North Korea. And he said, no problem, you can work
Do
for
you
me.
understand the language of the Chinese?
Obviously, yes. I'm no expert for that. Don't know. To be honest, I would go. But it seems to be
Border
rather
areas.
similar. So, and he lived there 1 year, and the farmer gave him money for this year. He worked for him, and with this money he could buy a bus ticket to Shanghai, which is a long way, it's something like 2,000 kilometers. And in Shanghai, he met in a restaurant the South Korean journalist by chance, and this journalist brought him into a South Korean embassy. But there, they said in the beginning, we are not believing you one word. He had to make something like 10 lie detector tests. They brought other defectors in the room and just took him to Seoul, and he was interrogated 6-8 weeks. Because they said, no, it's not true.
Yeah, on the place I wouldn't believe as well.
Yeah, nobody.
But then they just, I mean, activated in a way their secret service agents in North Korea, and they got messages back. We are hearing rumors, there is one guy who came out like that, and all the defectors who were just interviewing him, specialists, human rights specialists, said, no, this guy knows so much details, there is no doubt. So, and I mean, in the film he makes so, like this, open his arms, and his arms are going like that, because they are deformed. So.
concerning your comment on Yugoslavia, it's difficult to me to agree with you that the only reason that people started killing each other was that they were told they wouldn't be punished for that anymore. But you said it like it was the only reason. I can easily believe that the only reason that they did not kill before was that they were told they would be punished. But starting killing for the only reason that something tells you you won't be punished, would you start killing somebody? I mean, I'm pretty sure some reasons it was kind of hybrid between different groups that were
No, there were no different groups. They were families. They were married to each other. That was a tough thing in Bosnia and ex-Yugoslavia. They were living in communities together.
Okay, but still, killings did not happen occasionally. That they were happening between actually different groups. It was not that Serbs started killing Serbs and Albanians started killing Albanians. It was not that way. So
there were lots of ways which it was much more careless than only Serbs, Croatian, and Muslims. They were much more careless. But what I meant is this values of civilization. Of course, we cannot imagine it. But sorry, I mean, it was the truth. It happened then. And I went back home and said, okay, we have Catholics and Protestants. If we have one-time trouble and the people really think, okay, there is no punishment, I know that this security of civilization is very good. That's what I've learned then.
Do you mean before that there was no kind of hatred or terror?
No, there was nothing. I mean, there are wonderful documentaries about these villages where they just show you the videos, the private videos of the people, how they are just making parties together, how they are just celebrating marriages together, and how they live together 25, 30 years without any problem. And then suddenly they are slaughtering each other like hell. You had it in the Second World War too. There's a famous story of Berlin policemen. They never were forced to do it. They went on their own to the Nazi leadership and said, we want to go to Poland. They slaughtered them. They killed them for fun. Why? Because they knew we are not punished. Sorry, it's a reason. It's like that. It's shocking, I know, but it's like that. You can go in every location. I mean, what happened in Rwanda? The same.
What's happening in Shiites and Sunnis in Syria? I mean, it's the same.
But there it could be a little bit more difficult because you have interests in the background.
Oh, I see.
And I mean, I'm not expert for Syria, but there are lots of groups and lots of interests in the background. And people are paying groups and so on. That's complicated. But, and I'm not talking about the armies in Bosnia. I mean these civilians who made this, like Akan the Tiger. You're familiar with him. Yeah? I mean, he was a slaughterer like hell, but he never been a soldier, a regular soldier. It's like that.
We could go on forever, but we have to end somewhere in this discussion, unfortunately, and eat something, I guess, before they throw us out. Thank you so much for coming, but most of all, thank you to Marc Wiese.